We are technically live. Let me just make sure everything is going through all right. Okay, Kick stream is working. Fortunately, the title's not working though. It says we're having fun and smooching. It's not what we're doing today. Hold on.
We're not celebrating Pride Month.
Yeah. Yeah, we are live on YouTube. Live on YouTube. Okay, cool. Go over on YouTube and let me just. All right, one last thing. Sorry.
Sorry.
The first time I ever streamed on Kick, I streamed for like an hour and it said I was live and I wound up not being live. So I just want to make sure we're actually live.
Yeah, it's pretty important.
Okay, I'm live. All right. I appreciate it, Mike. Now let me just check to make sure that that chat went through to the restream. I don't know what to do. We'll figure it out another time.
Is your video on right now?
On the stream, yes. I'm streaming my webcam directly to OBS.
Okay.
It won't let me do it both to OBS and Discord, unfortunately. So that way, it's a little bit harder.
Okay.
All right, let's get our drinks. And you got pee?
No, I'm good. Could you just link the where you're streaming it to?
Yes.
So I have access to that.
I DM'd it, or I'm sorry, I put it in the general of the Discord.
I'm ready when you are, man.
All right. So welcome everybody. Oh, no. All right, now we're recording. Welcome, everybody. Today is going to be the pilot episode of the podcast featuring yours truly, Big Papi Danimo, a.k.a. Daniel, or Daniel Ramos, whatever you want to call me. And my co-host is Mr. Ryan, or RCam TV. Would you like to introduce yourself to everybody?
Yeah, hey, how you guys doing? I'm the host of a YouTube channel called RCam, and I'm really excited to be in this conversation with Dan about free speech. It's something I'm really passionate about, and I enjoy having these conversations, and I've been looking forward to this.
Yep. So everything is going to be bare bones. Again, this is the pilot episode. All of these graphics, the way that we have the setup, the lighting, the sound, all of that stuff will be tweaked in the future. Even kind of the structure of the conversations and everything. But right now, we just want to put this on the record, look back at it, get your type of feedback, and we'd appreciate it. Even if you feel that it's negative feedback, we definitely would love to hear all types of feedback. With that being said, free speech is something that we, as Americans, I think it's one of the most fundamental issues that is on the plate in current American politics. It affects everybody, whether you know it or not, whether you agree, it affects you. Whether you're at work, your home life. I mean, in the past 10 years, we've had families break apart. Relationships break apart, best friends break apart because of, differences of opinions. And it boils down to free speech. We should be able to have differences of opinions. We should be able to speak about them, and we should be able to change our mind. I've had some very good free speech opportunities in my life, having a platform. I'm new here on Kick, but I have streamed on Twitch before. I've had a fantastic time talking about things, but I've also had some really bad times, and I know Ryan here can definitely talk about some experiences. He's told me, if you want to give a little bit of insight of how you feel about the matter.
Yeah, I think free speech is absolutely essential. It's one of the bedrocks of our country, and I think without it, we will find ourselves in a worse spot than we really understand. I think one of the best ways to challenge bad ideas is with good ones. And when you don't have the ability to freely express yourself on a platform like Twitch, or in my case, like TikTok or Instagram, it does create problems, because then you're only hearing one side and one perspective. And I think that can be detrimental to a society. I really do. And, that's why I'm so passionate about free speech and being able to freely exchange ideas, is because there are a lot of bad ideas out there. I might have some really bad ideas that need to be challenged. And I think, honestly, one of the beautiful things about free speech and having the free flow of conversation is just being able to think through ideas. It's like a lot of times, like I'll say something, and then someone will just real quick hit me with something I didn't think about, and very subtly my perspective changes on something, because I'm presented with information I didn't hear before, and now my mind is being opened to that new information, and I change the way I think about a situation. And I think when you censor certain aspects of that speech, it creates problems.
That's definitely well said. I mean, you and I have a lot of agreements on certain issues. I mean, we've talked in length about other things. We definitely don't agree on everything. I think it's important to take your own ideas and be critical of them. Like you said, not only being challenged by others, but challenge yourself. Put it up against the window, see if there's any light shining through, and then figure out, why are there holes there? Are there holes there because, maybe you haven't thought of something, maybe it's a bad idea. And when you start to see those holes, it makes you reflect inwardly to see, should I shape my ideology? Should I change my ideology, or should I add on to it? So the purpose of this talk tonight is going to be about the actual nature, the legality of free speech. Do we have it in our country? These are big questions that seem kind of elementary, but you'd be surprised in some of the situations that have occurred throughout our country. So first, I'm going to start off with you, Ryan. What is your understanding of free speech, How do you feel
So
about it? And do you think we currently have it in the US?
So my understanding of free speech is what's protected under the First Amendment. So I don't believe that the government has the right or authority to restrict speech that they would consider, hate speech. So the First Amendment states that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of a religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or of press or the right of the people to peaceably assemble and petition the government for redress of grievances. Now, this does not mean that we have the right to say whatever we want and how we want, because there are certain categories of speech that are not protected. Like we can't call for violence because that would be a violation. That's not protected under the First Amendment.
Yeah.
So there are different levels. So I do still believe, though, that we do have free speech, but I do believe it's being hindered and slowly eroded. So I do believe that's happening, and I believe that a lot of these big tech platforms like Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, formerly under the old leadership of Twitter, they were acting kind of as shadow arms of the government and censoring speech, and that would be a direct violation of the First Amendment, because now it's not just a private company censoring speech. They're doing it on behest of the government, so they are actually violating the rights of the American people to carry out their First Amendment right.
Yeah, and I want to add that very important determination. I'm sorry, difference between a private entity and a public entity. Public being anything government related, your laws in your town. When you go to the DMV, when you go to the post office, all of these public works, school, the whole nine. Anything that taxpayers pay for a service to run, that's going to be your public entities. Now, private being your Walmart. If you come to my house, anything along those lines are private entities. And there are different laws regarding both. There's different laws regarding, trespassing, what you can do, what you can say, where you can go, what time, et cetera, et cetera. So, definitely we do technically have free speech because it is on the books. It is on the books stating that we have free speech. But like you stated, there are arms or pieces of the government that are weaseling their way through these platforms and allowing these platforms to shape the way that people think through information, disinformation, censorship, saying that somebody is disinformation when, we all saw it through COVID. Nobody knew what anything was because it was just brand new medical disaster, and so we had no idea what was going on, but people were being slammed and thrown in the garbage, and their lives were being ruined because they were kind of spitballing ideas and talking about things, thinking of potential solutions, and they're being thrown in the garbage by the government, or I'm sorry, through the platform by the government. I'm not saying that free speech needs to be everywhere. If I'm working at a grocery store, I can't curse my customer out as much as I want to, because the company pays me to keep a certain type of, I guess, image, you would say. So my question to you would be, if you feel that the government has an arm in these platforms, how would you truly eradicate it outside of somebody who is, full force, I believe in free speech, can't be bought, somebody like Elon Musk, who just spends billions of dollars on these platforms? Do you think that there's any way that legislation could occur, or do you think that corruption is just so deep that there's always going to be this issue?
Yeah, I actually do think there is a way. And I think so. There's something called Section 230, and this is what most social media platforms are protected under. So basically, Section 230 declares that participants on the internet, whether they're service providers or individuals, will not be held legally or legally liable for content posted online by other people.
Mhm.
So I think if they're acting as like a shadow arm of the government and removing people, then they should lose that protection and then be liable for any misinformation that's spread on their platform. So remove those legal protections from them if they're not if they're going to act on behest of the government. That's what I would like to see happen, because one of the problems with social media companies is that they like to so like there's this difference between like a platform and a publisher. So a platform would be like they just allow us to say what we want. They have their general guidelines, but they kind of just let us rock. But a
Yeah.
publisher, they're now actively kind of censoring or tweaking what's being said and what's allowed on their platform. So if they're going to act like a publisher, especially on behest of the government, then I don't think they deserve those protections. So like most news organizations, they're publishers, so they have a lot of control over what's published through their websites, and that makes sense. And it makes sense that if they publish something libelous, that they should be held responsible for it.
Yeah.
Well,
Then
I
get
think
sued. Yeah.
yeah, and I think the same thing should happen to social media companies if they're going to act like publishers. If you're going to act like publishers, then you need to be treated like publishers. You can't straddle this line and play both sides. I don't think that's
Yeah.
right.
So something because that's the first time I've ever heard of that potential solution, and it's not bad. The difference between a news agency being their own publisher versus the government being involved would be, I would say, how do I explain this? I would want to be able to FOIA request anything that occurs within that organization. So
Yeah.
let's say, okay, we get rid of it and Facebook is now controlled by the government. Well, guess what? I want to see your algorithms. I want to see who you banned, why you banned, all the internal reports. A lot of people are not familiar with FOIA laws. FOIA is the Freedom of Information Act. You have the ability to go to your local government if there's a vote that's passed, the DMV, if you send in a request, a police report, anything along those lines. You can request it. It's a very small fee. I mean, they kind of are knuckleheads about it and put you through the ringer. But if you stay persistent, you can get it and get all of the information regarding it, as long as it's not like classified by the government or anything along those lines. So that would be something that I would say the FOIA laws have to be applicable to these platforms, or rather, I guess, publishers via the government. But then the question is, who would want to use those platforms? I know technically that's what is happening, but would you want to use Facebook knowing the government has full access and control of it?
Not really, but you know what? I thought Elon Musk did something pretty clever. So there's you got the BBC and NPR and
Oh,
these
yeah.
national public broadcasting organizations, and he put a label on all of them on Twitter that indicated that they were government funded. So let us know which organizations are government funded, and then we'll decide whether we want to hear from them or not.
Yeah. No,
I thought that was clever. I thought it was genius. A lot of people got really upset over it, but I well played.
and that's the thing. I don't care if a company is left leaning or right leaning. Just be honest about it.
Yes.
I actually listen to NPR very often. And I usually, when I'm in the car, I listen to NPR. It's one of the best stations that I can get because I live in the woods. But it is so obviously left leaning. And it's like, it's okay. You guys could be left leaning, but stop saying you're unbiased. And that's like my biggest pet peeve. It's almost like you're lying to me, or you're trying to be deceitful to me. So again, we have companies out there that are hardcore. Hey, we have liberal ideologies. I mean, for the most part, now we can see it with like the BLM, a lot of the pride stuff, the LGBT stuff. That kind of is an indicator that they're very left leaning. On the right side of things, we have conservative companies, like that pillow guy. What's his name?
Mike Lindell.
Yeah, Mike Lindell. Like, it's pretty obvious, and that's okay. I like that. I think that ultimately we need to have a lot more transparency, regardless if the government is involved or not. Regardless, we need to have more transparency with these social media companies, because social media is one of the most impactful elements in our society right now. I mean, we're changing elections, we're changing what we buy, how we live, who's important, who's not important, who we hate, who we love.
Yeah.
Transparency is going to be key. So I want to kind of go off in a little bit of a little tangent. I'm going to wrap it back in, but this is super important. A lot of companies now are getting rid of people, whether they're firing them or they're dropping brand deals, because maybe the person said something that was wrong, something classified as hate speech. And I wanted to talk to you about hate speech. What's your experience of hate speech? How do you feel about it? Just go off on hate speech.
So I don't believe there's such a thing as hate speech. I don't believe that. I believe we should be able to say the freedom of speech encompasses all speech, even speech that we might consider hateful or we don't like. There's just recently, what is it? The Dodgers hosted these drag performers called the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, and they do this performances that are kind of denigrating to Catholics. Now, I don't like that at all, but I do think that they have the freedom of speech, and I wouldn't classify that as being hate speech. Or if somebody says a racial slur, yes, it's hateful. Yes, it's racist. Yes, I personally wouldn't want to associate with people that are using racial slurs, but I don't think it'd be hate speech. So I don't really believe in hate speech as a principle, because who decides what is hate speech and who decides what is hateful? Who decides that? And who is setting those rules for organizations to police that? Because some people would argue that not using somebody's preferred pronouns is hate speech, or misgendering somebody is hate speech, and that's not something that I would say is hate speech. Or some people might argue that Bible verses are hate speech, and I don't think that. So it's very, very broad. So I don't like that term hate speech. There's going to be speech that we don't like to hear. Actually, I went on Gab, which is like a truly uncensored uh, social media platform, and I saw people using the N word, and it was jarring to me because I just don't see that word anymore. But I'm like, well, that I don't like that. I don't like it. But that is true hate speech when people are able to say whatever or that's true free speech. People are able to say whatever they want, even if we don't like it, and then we challenge them on that. We call them out on that. And yeah, I think we should be able to say what we want, and it doesn't mean that you won't suffer any social repercussions for that. Because if you're using language that I personally don't like, I'm just not going to associate with you. I'm not going to do business with you. I'm not going to, I don't want to be around you. And I think that's the risk that you run, is that social ostracization. And I think that's actually good. And it lets you know too, like, all right, so that person's acting wild. Maybe I don't want to associate with them.
Well, I think the issue too is, and this is why it's hard to find a solution, because you say, okay, this person is using hateful speech. It's not necessarily hate speech under the normal societal definition of it, but they're being a knucklehead. They're stupid. They're running around saying silly, reckless stuff. You don't do business with them. You don't interact with them. You are in essence creating societal pressure on them for using those words. Now, obviously, if you're dropping hard ER, if you're being hateful, like just straight up attacking a group of people, or even if you're attacking somebody, it's a lot easier to draw that line. The problem is, and this is what I've noticed, that line has not only gone further, it's gotten blurrier, and then your identity dictates a lot. For example, on Twitch, saying the N-word without the ER, uh, you can say it by their rules. It literally says you can say it. But the problem is, if you're not black, then you can't say it and you get banned. So now we're adding identity into it. So my question would be, okay, well, what about the F word towards a gay person? Well, what if the person is bisexual? Are they only allowed to say half the word? Like, what if they're in the closet? That's why it's really hard to ever set these rules or these limitations on words and speech, because who sets it, who's allowed, who's in, who's out. I can't figure out. To me, it's say what you want to say. And at the end of the day, you have to realize that we all live in the same country. We're all neighbors. And we're going to have to answer for the way that we act. And at the end of the day, we know what's in our heart. God knows what's in our heart. And I could be a comedian and get on stage, say a bunch of jokes about Hispanics, about, Hispanics are loud as hell. They party all night, blah, 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 having kids at 15, 16, blah, blah, blah. And then, a whole angry mob, hate speech, cancel him, this cis white Well, I'm Puerto Rican. I was raised Puerto Rican. But now I have to use my identity as a defense to be able to use my free speech. And that to me is like, what my context is. I'm a comedian. I'm telling jokes. It's not like I'm up here doing a podcast going off about how much I hate Hispanics. So go ahead.
Yeah. And two, like, what if certain people think like the term cis is denigrating toward, straight people? Or, like people don't like the term Latinx. What if it's reversed, and these terms that are often used by progressives, we view as being hateful. Then what? Is that allowed? So I think part of the problem too is that a lot of social media sites have these arbitrary rules where they only apply in one way and not the other way. And I would have a whole lot more respect if they actually stated like these words are this is what you're not allowed to say, and they stood by it instead of arbitrarily following, what they think is hateful and what isn't. And I do think the social pressure is also a good thing, because let's just pretend we're in the real world. You can't just say whatever you want and there be no consequences. You throw on the N word to the wrong person, you're getting punched in the mouth. If you're ending it with a hard ER, you're getting punched in the mouth. And I personally, if play stupid games and find out what happens.
And stupid prizes.
Yeah, it's it is what it is. And I think on social media is kind of the same thing. Like you if you're directly violating their guidelines, don't be surprised when you do get censored. But I think they need to be clear on what those guidelines are, because like if I signed up for a site and I understood it, and they weren't changing the game as we went on, and went and had this more encompassing, more broad rules for what you can and cannot say, I don't think that's fair. I don't think it's fair to pull the rug out from under people.
So you do agree with societal pressure, and I've come a little bit more to terms with societal pressure, but one could argue that ultimately this is a result of societal pressure. You just happen to be on the minority side of that societal pressure, such as majority of platforms, social media, media in general, Hollywood, the whole nine. That's very left leaning. Yourself, you're more on the right leaning side. So wouldn't this just be societal pressure? You're just on the losing side of it.
I guess so, to a degree, because they do censor only one side. But we're seeing the reverse of that happen, actually, with Anheuser-Busch and the whole incident with Dylan Mulvaney. There was societal pressure against Bud Light, and they lost billions of dollars because of it. So I think they're going to think twice before making an ad campaign like that. because a lot of people rejected what they had to say. And I think they're adjusting accordingly in the right direction. So it can be it can go both ways. Right now, it does seem like the odds are really stacked against conservatives in terms of social media platforms. But I think they're getting a little bit smarter and figuring out how to actually be effective in making change and making their voices heard. And having people like Elon Musk buy Twitter that actually allows free speech is another thing that's just really helped. There was a recent effort to censor a documentary called "What Is a Woman" by a guy
Matt
named Matt
Walsh.
from the
Yeah.
Daily Wire, and that severely backfired. And a lot of the times, the attempts to censor people really backfire. One of the things that kind of got this whole censorship uh, ball going was the banning of Alex Jones. And I don't agree with a lot of what Alex Jones says, but I still thought he had the right to say it. And what freaked me out about that whole situation was that all these media sites colluded together and overnight deplatform that guy. That was really scary because a lot of people are celebrating. We finally got that madman off the internet, and it was a big win. But one, he did become more famous than he ever had before, and two, it just set a dangerous precedent, which I saw just a domino effect of people getting banned and banned and banned, and a lot of people I follow just getting the axe, and suddenly now they're all getting pushed to I would say sometimes the fringes. And if people are worried about like radicalization, well, what happens when you're removing all these people from a healthy conversation and a conversation with other people, and you're pushing them to these fringe websites where they're around other disenfranchised people? Well, what happens then, where they are only hearing their own voices? That's why I think like the free exchange of ideas is necessary, because then you don't get people that are going to get radicalized down these rabbit holes. And I believe both left and right have them on the internet.
So I think the problem though is, and I'm one of the I've lived online for quite a few years type of person. Uh, it's really hard to hold accountability to humans when they're on the internet because of anonymity. They have the ability to say things whatever they want, when they want, how they want, and they can just transmit it to everybody. So like you said, you create disenfranchised people, you put them into their own little corner, and things go a little bit crazy. We saw with the incel community how they went on Reddit and they kind of just were kind of going a little overboard. Alex Jones, for example. I haven't really watched a lot of Alex Jones. I know that he's said a couple of interesting things and some cool things, but I also think he self-admittedly is a conspiracy theorist. I'm a little bit of a conspiracy theorist myself. My understanding was, and I could be wrong, misled by the media, was that he got banned primarily because of the fact that he was doxing people and giving out their personal information. And because of that, some of these people were being harassed by the masses. And that coupled with, what they saw as him spewing bullshit is what, pushed them to all banning him. Now, I do agree. It is a little spooky. I mean, we just recently saw it with Andrew Tate, how all of the platforms colluded at once. These are different private entities that really don't have, any type of overlapping besides the fact that they're in the same industry, and they all group together and they ban somebody. That is scary. But the problem is, one could argue that Alex Jones should be banned from all of these. One could argue that, what's his face? Andrew Tate should be banned. Do I agree with it? Andrew Tate, I don't think so. Alex Jones, it's kind of, there's some fine lines that he crossed and he didn't cross.
I don't think he should be free of any repercussions. I think
Yeah.
the legal mess that he's finding himself in is more than just for the things that he's done, but I think the precedent set is truly scary because it just wasn't social media sites.
Yeah.
It was PayPal, it was credit card companies, it was
Oh, I didn't know
banks.
that.
It
Wow.
was it was I think he was using maybe not him, but I know the guy that launched Gab was using Amazon web servers, and they nuked his servers. And then another issue that came up that we saw when the sitting president of the United States got banned, which that's crazy in itself, was the emergence of the social media site called Parlor, and it was gaining traction. And a lot of people on the left would be like, well, if you don't like it, then go build your own website. Well, they did,
Yeah.
and then Amazon Web Services nuked their servers, revoked their ability to use their servers, and then suddenly just they destroyed that company. They really did. They leveled them, and they've never been able to recover from that. It's like, and these are people that have a little bit more money. What about they do this to your average person? How do you fight that? You get your voice removed and you're not able to say anything. You're not able to engage with anybody. You're alone. You're not able to use banks. You're not able to use PayPal. You're not able to do anything. You're
Yeah.
just blacklisted from all social life, at least in terms of the internet. And that's not good, man. That really is Orwellian and creepy to me, and it makes me uncomfortable. So I think, yeah, we don't like what Alex, some of the things that he said, but I think the president is much, much more concerning, and we've seen it continue to be used over and over again.
So I have a question. Let's break this down to the foundation and simplify it. If you had your own social media company and you didn't like me, hated me, every time I go live and I make a video, you're just like, that guy is a fucking idiot. Shut up. Stop talking. And then I went to your platform and I started posting my dumb videos with my dumb opinions in your mind. Do you think you should be allowed to ban me?
Not unless you were violating whatever the terms of service that I created for you to use it. I personally wouldn't ban you. I mean, I'm exposed to a lot of people that are saying a lot of nasty things every single day. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna ban them. Now, maybe I personally, in my account, I'll just block you. A
Yeah.
freedom of association. I don't have to interact with you, but no, I'd let you use the platform, even if you were saying denigrating things against me. I would let you use the platform, and I think that's the consequence of having free speech is you're gonna unfortunately hear people say things that you don't like. That's a reality of living in the real world too. Sometimes you're gonna hear things you don't like, and people are not going to like you, and they're gonna say nasty things to you. You keep it moving, or you engage with them and challenge them, and see where everything falls.
Yeah, it's tough because there's a fine line between legislation and societal pressure and who's winning versus who's losing. There's always going to be a side that is upset. And so I'm trying to figure out in my mind what path can we go down that would allow everybody to feel like there was a compromise made. And I would think, I'm just spitballing an idea here. I could be totally wrong. But what if we allowed every social media to do whatever they want in terms of being able to ban anybody however they want it? And because we live in a capitalistic free market society, well, hey, if you don't like it, go make your own, platform. Do you think that, I mean, technically that's kind of close to what we're at right now, but do you think that that would be an optimal solution? Or do you think that eventually the tides would shift and maybe, let's say, a conservative platform comes out and that becomes the next big thing, and then now liberals are, on it and they're getting, ostracized and canceled and the whole nine? Do you think that that could potentially happen?
Yeah, I do think that could potentially happen. Pending they don't have like Amazon Web Services nuke their servers. I think yeah, that could be a very real possibility. But I think uh, if all of big tech is against you, it makes it very very difficult. Which is why like someone like Musk buying Twitter was such a big deal because he's kind of going against the grain. But there is one thing that I thought about is that he actually doesn't let everybody say whatever they want. He's personally banned a couple people from using the platform. He's let a bunch of people back on, but there's some people that he personally thought took it too far and banned them. Kanye West being one of them, permanently banned from Twitter. I think still banned. Um, I do think they can. I just think if they're going to nuke the infrastructure, that's a problem. And I think though it has caused conservatives to be a little bit more innovative and not as dependent on Silicon Valley. So you have the emergence of Rumble, who has actually their own servers that a lot of people are starting to use. So that's a good thing that's come out of this. And I do think I'm hedging my bets on Rumble that they will ultimately be a competitor to YouTube. And I think maybe then you'll see some of these social media sites correct and be a little bit more liberal. Radical idea, I know, in their policies for free speech, and people will start using maybe going back to them if they relax their views. But I think that healthy competition might pressure them to do it. We'll see though.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that because I remember being young. I'm about to be 34 this week, and when I was young, the Republican side were kind of the side that was very heavy on censorship. I remember Republicans saying, "Hey, don't play this. We need to ban these video games. We need to ban these movies, the whole nine. These books, they're too violent or evil. Blah blah blah." You can't talk about this, can't talk about that. And that really turned me off towards the Republican Party. And that's why a lot of my life I was very, liberal. And I was more, at the time I thought I was liberal. In actuality, I realized that I'm more libertarian. But I realized that ultimately it's very frustrating when you're put in a box and you're an out the box type thinker. Some people, they don't have a problem with it. They love being told what to do. I mean, I'm not sure if you've ever managed people before. There are some people where they cannot exist unless you give them the numerical order in which they need to do things. They struggle without anytime you give them autonomy, they struggle. So my question to you would be, and this is kind of a piggyback of the solution or an alternate, maybe a spitball. Do you think that a company, and let's say, and this is outside of social media, do you think that a company should no longer, by your rules, no longer be allowed to kick anybody out of their business if they don't want them there? Such as like a brick and mortar, let's say you make sandwiches and you just don't like somebody in your town and you don't want to serve them. Should you then be forced to serve them? Otherwise, you're kind of liable to some type of suit.
I would say it depends on what the people did because yeah, it depends on what they've done. If you just personally don't like them, I don't see that. Like, I don't think that's right.
Yeah.
But if they've done something, maybe stolen from your business, or they badmouth your business, or yeah, then you don't have to do business with them. That I guess it does come down to freedom of association. You don't have to do it.
Yeah.
But it just can't be like an arbitrary thing, like especially if it came to like skin color or something like that. Yeah, I don't think.
Yeah, and we have laws in place for that.
People.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely have laws in place for that type of, because we have protected classes in,
Yeah.
And I'm using quotes because that's literally what it's called. We have protected classes, women, people who are gay, disabled, the whole nine. There's a long list of people that you cannot discriminate, whether it's housing, job opportunity, services, goods and services rendered. So my question then would be, what do you think? Why would there be a difference between you not allowing somebody in your brick and mortar store versus a social media platform? How would you draw a line there?
Well, because a brick and mortar store isn't the public square, the social media sites are. I mean, it's a place where we use specifically to use our voices. Where I'm not going to Dunkin' Donuts to exercise my ability to do practice free speech. I'm getting a donut. I'm
Yeah.
not going to Best Buy to exercise my free speech. I'm going to buy electronics. So I think it's just a little it's categorically just different. It's not the same. That but these social media platforms, they are the public square. This is where conversations are happening. This is where we get the news. This is where we connect with people. We're not going into the middle of towns and congregating anymore. That's not happening. We get all of our information online. So to restrict people from that is in a way denying them the right to that information and those public gatherings. You can't ban somebody from going to the park. It's kind of the same mentality.
Yeah.
You can't ban them from being able to exercise their First Amendment right.
So you would argue almost that it's it's owned by a private industry, but it's open to the public.
Yeah,
Okay. Um, I got to think on that. That's actually a pretty good. That's a pretty good distinction there, and I I would see it would be really hard to kind of draw those lines legally, because how do we force, technically, how do we force a company to serve people if they don't want to in a private industry on in one industry, but then on the other industry we can't. Now, granted, there are some companies where you kind of have to do that, where people have the not right in the terms of like the Bill of Rights, but they have the right or the expectation to have those type of services. Such as if that's the only place that they can get food in a certain area, then there are different limitations to how they can go about trespassing people, how they can limit access to these people. So you had mentioned Trump earlier, and listen, I know Trump's a hot topic. We ain't gonna go down the rabbit hole of Trump. Some people love him, some people absolutely hate him. We'll definitely talk about him in the future, considering he is going to be running for president in 2024. But a lot of people state that Trump was a very dangerous person because of his messages, and that because of his massive platform, not only in the United States, but to the world, that he should be held responsible for the things that he said. So my question to you, and this is really for everybody to think about, do you think that a person should be held responsible if someone commits violence or any type of, I'm not just going to say violence, because there could be things like, maybe they stole something, or maybe, if somebody committed some type of crime and hurt another individual financially or physically, do you think that that person should be held liable for the words that they said?
absolutely not. Unless they are directly calling for violence. So inciting for violence would indicate that they are directly calling for violence. So if Trump got up on stage and was like, "I want you to go attack the U.S. Capitol," yeah, definitely. But that's not what happened. And I think him just being influential is definitely part of it, because I do agree that there is a level of danger, maybe to certain ideologies, of letting people with a lot of influence speak freely. That could be perceived as dangerous by certain people. But I do think we need, but I do not think that's the same thing as directly inciting violence. My memory is a little bit fuzzy on this, but I know that somebody felt inspired to kill somebody after reading to was it to, no, not Catcher in the Rye. It drove them to want
Oh,
to
really?
kill the individual. Do we hold the author? Maybe it was the author. I don't remember. But do we hold the person that wrote the book liable? Because one person that was losing their mental faculties, took something and ran with it, grabbed onto one word. I don't think that's
Yeah.
right. And I think it could be widely abused. That's why, yeah, people like Andrew Tate got banned. I don't like, some of the stuff that he says. I also like some of the stuff that he says, but I don't think it warranted banning him. But I do think he was highly influential, and that's why they removed him. They didn't want him to have that medium to speak directly to young men. So I think this can be applied, anywhere. What if they viewed, like people like Martin Luther King, when he was speaking as a threat, and he was a threat to the powers that be. He's very influential. What if they categorize what he said as hate speech, or inciting violence? Because some people may have acted in a way that uh, was not good, or was actually violent, but they acted on their own accord. Hold those individuals accountable, yes, not the person that's just speaking, unless of course they directly call for violence.
So I 100% agree with that. I really do. But let's hold this idea up against the window to see, how do you feel if a YouTuber, let's say biggest YouTuber, 100 million subscribers, and it's primarily kids, and he makes a video saying, and this is gonna date me a little bit, but saying, "Hey, I love eating Tide Pods," and then eats a Tide Pod on camera. Do you think that person should be liable when we have, maybe 6,000-7,000 kids dying from eating Tide Pods?
That's a
That's a tough one. I know.
that is a tough one. I think I'm gonna have to think on that
All
because,
right.
yeah, well, I have a very soft spot when it comes to kids. So
Yeah.
like my knee jerk reaction is to say yes, but I gotta think this all the way through, and and I do think, maybe having standards, and I don't know where that falls from, because I mean, could that definitionally be like inciting violence or encouraging people to do like bad behavior? Is this like a real scenario that you're describing?
No, no, no. This is a hypothetical, and literally all that said is, "I love eating Tide Pods," and they just pop one into their mouth, gushes down their face, ha ha ha.
Yeah, then I guess like too, there's like, like context. Was it a joke? Because there are things that you could think about, like what if it was a dumb prank, making fun of people that were eating Tide
Yeah.
Pods. So these are all things that you kind of got to consider. I guess it'd have to be like on a case by case basis. Was there actual malicious intent to kill kids? Was that the situation? Because then maybe that person loses their sponsorships, and then maybe they have some legal repercussions with parents who are suing them, and there are just some natural consequences that happen with that. I don't
Yeah,
know.
and I think you said two key words that are really important in this conversation, and that's context and intent. Context is a little bit easier. You just have to take the time and look at the situation. Intent is a little bit harder because it's hard to prove or disprove somebody's intent. I mean, truly only they know their intent unless they write it down somewhere. And I think, that's something that we have completely thrown to the wayside, and that's intent. Why
Yeah.
are people saying the things that they say? Are they saying it maliciously? Are they saying it to let off steam? I mean, I've been very angry throughout my life. I've had anger issues a lot. I've said some horrible things that I did not mean. Now, thank goodness a lot of it happened pre-internet being crazy. I was a young kid saying stupid stuff, so a lot of it's not on camera. But imagine it was. Should my life be over? Should I be ostracized, by the community? Do I have the ability to grow? Can I grow up? I mean, we look back at Kevin Hart. Kevin Hart, got canceled from, was it the Grammys or the Oscars? And everybody hated him for a long time because of the fact that he I think he said something about, if his son was gay, blah, blah, blah. And he stated that he no longer felt that way. And that was maybe 10, 15 years before the actual situation arose. So
Yeah.
do you think that people should have the ability to grow, or what's the word, rehabilitate from, bad situations, bad speech, the whole nine? Because technically in our society, we go to jail, we serve our time, and we technically are, quote, rehabilitated, and we're allowed to enter society. Do you think the same thing with speech?
Yeah, I think there needs to be a statute of limitations on what you can be outraged over. You can't go back 10 years and be outraged over, just cultural norms, because, at the time, even if we didn't like it, that was the norm at the time. Even the people that are, canceling Kevin Hart, they probably thought the same way. They just, they may have not said it out loud. So I don't think I think there needs to be a statute of limitations there, and I do think we need to give people the ability to grow, especially if they're children. They say stupid things as a kid. I think we need to extend them a little bit more grace because I thank God I was not active on the internet when I was younger, or at
Yeah.
least in ways that could be recorded because I've said some wild things. I'm glad that there's no record of it. But yeah, I do think we need to extend them a little bit of grace.
All right. So next, in terms of the value of freedom of speech, do you think that people are caring less and less about that right? Do you think that the average person, or do you think that it's more of a small minority just screaming the loudest about it?
I think there are a lot of people that still value freedom of speech. I really, really do. I think it is uncommon because there's a lot of social pressure that people are just afraid to speak openly and say what they really think, because of censorship and because of cancel culture that they're afraid. But I think they still feel it and they still want to do it. And I think what changes that too is people like you and me having open dialogue and speaking freely because I believe that that inspires other people to be a little bit more bold and say what's on their mind regardless of what happens as a result. But I do think most people do value free speech. I don't think a lot of people fully see the value in it and like they don't fully understand the gravity. I also think there's just a certain faction of people that just don't think about it. They just, they're NPCs. They just go with the flow and they're fine either way. But I do think majority of the people do value free speech, and it's a small collective of people in Valley that are, controlling what we can say and limiting free speech and sometimes unfortunately at the best of the government, which I'm not a big fan of. But I do think that, information needs to be decentralized. I think that's one of the great things about having platforms like Twitter. And I think that this this is ultimately good for all people is to be able to, have this open communication. And I know it's something that I value and something that I hope more people value because it's very easy to be critical of freedom of speech until you're the one that can't say anything. Until you're the one censored, until you no longer have a voice or a platform, then it gets real scary. Then it gets Orwellian, then it gets creepy, and then you realize that you know uh uh you may have shot yourself in the foot. And I don't want it to get that far. What is there that there's that quote. It's like first they came for uh the Jews, but I wasn't a Jew, so I didn't care. And then they came for this group, and then they came for me. And it's like I don't want that to happen in terms of free speech. I don't want us to be able to, suddenly realize when it's too late to
Yeah.
make a difference. So I do think it's something that if people don't value it, they should start valuing it because you could be on the other end of it, and I don't want you to be there.
I think though it is. I think you hit it right on the head of the nail that ultimately we don't care. I mean, but that's just a human fact. We don't care about things until they affect us. And I believe that's always going to be a fact. There's not much that we can change. Human beings, we're inherently just selfish. We only care about what affects us. So I'm going to ask you one final question. Do you think that this is a solvable problem?
I do think it's a solvable problem. I do. Do I have the grandmaster solution yet? No. But I do think that part of moving toward that solution is letting us freely exchange ideas. I think it becomes impossible if speech is restricted in such a way that we can't openly communicate and we can't share ideas, we can't challenge each other, and we can't hear somebody's new great innovation for free speech or idea that or idea that they have for being able to freely express ourselves. I think it's absolutely essential, and I think it's so essential that which is why Elon Musk bought Twitter. And I go back to that because it's very significant. And I do think it's solvable. It took somebody with 44 billion dollars to make that happen, but I think it's going in the right direction, and I think somebody setting a standard like that is going to challenge some other companies to think a little bit differently about how they do business. I mean, we're seeing actually some companies relax some of their censorship policies. The COVID misinformation is no longer a thing. So I,
Yeah.
I do think we're seeing some of this stuff get solved by having the existence of an entity that's not restricting it. And I think platforms like Rumble and Kick, they're a light at the end of the tunnel, man. It's really encouraging to see these guys build it from the ground up, and I don't think it's going to be something that happens overnight, but I do think it's solvable, and I think the emergence of these new platforms are part of that solution. But I also believe that we are part of the solution in just being continuing to remain steadfast and saying what we believe is true, not capitulating to lies, and being able to see above the nonsense and seeing through the underhanded practices that happen at some of these companies. And my advice my advice too to people watching is, one, abide by the policies of whatever company or social media platform you're on. Don't go in Wild West, guns blazing, say what you want, and then get banned because you're no use to anybody banned. You're just not. Play with their, skirt their guidelines. Do what you have to do, but just say what is true. Don't participate in untruth, and use platforms that are more free, like Twitter and Rumble and Kick, to really let your hair down and say what you want, and and push people in that direction so that we're building out those platforms, because the bigger they get, the more of a threat that we become to the rest of Silicon Valley.
Yeah. I mean, it's. I definitely can see the merit in that. I personally believe that this is probably never going to be a solvable problem. I think that there's always going to be a minority that is going to be upset and feel oppressed and feel like they're being silenced. Whether their belief is radical or not. I just, the way that human beings are, we fight about things, whether it's land, possessions, ideas. We're just in a constant tug of war. Now, if there was a solution, I would have to say that I think that a company like Rumble, a company like, you said Parler, which is, you said it's gone now.
It still exists. It's just nobody's using.
Oh, okay. So dead. So one company is going to have to make a massive difference, and they're going to have to show that it can make money. Because ultimately, that's what this country boils down to. Whether you like it or you hate it, we're all here eating the shit sandwich together, just like Bill Burr said. And that's what it boils down to. It boils down to money. So will these companies be able to make money? And once they do, once they start making money, are they going to be able to keep that same mission that they had when they first started? Because look at all these platforms. They all started grassroots. They all started with a core mission. I mean, you can look at Walmart, you can look at McDonald's, you can look at Twitch, you can look at all of these companies. They all had a vision and a passionate person. But once money got involved, and I'm talking big money, it all went out the window. We just need to make sure that people stay true. Whether you like Elon Musk or not, I do like him because he stays true to what he believes. We need more people like that. It's not about the money. It's about the mission. It's about, what we feel in our heart. And that's all we can do. We can just keep fighting the good fight.
Yeah, and he really just one last thing. He really put his money where his money where his mouth is. With the banning of that documentary, What Is a Woman, from Twitter. He ended up, I'm assuming, fired, the people that blocked the documentary, and ended up, retweeting it and sharing it on his own timeline, and and expose that documentary to, I think it's over 175 million people at this point have watched it. And I think that's really good. So it just shows me that he's a principled man. If he says he's for free speech, he really is, and he's done enough where I don't need a lot more convincing. He seemed to stand by that. And I think just having principled men do this is important. And I do have concerns about investors, because they do ultimately end up, the more money, the more you're actively trying to appease them. So it's just, that is a little concerning. So we'll have to see how that pans out. But yeah, I do. I'm ultimately hopeful.
You keep that hope. I'm a little bit more of a pessimist. But at the end of the day, whether this is a solution or not, like I said, keep fighting the good fight. I do want to thank everybody that has watched. We got quite a few viewers here on both platforms. I'm actually super surprised. Thank you guys all. Thank you for your chats or your conversation in the chat. I was reading them. Again, this is the pilot episode. We're going to be getting a lot of kinks, out, and we're going to make this thing look more beautiful. We eventually will create a Discord so you can come in, join in on the conversation. One thing that I did see from Paladin, I love that idea. We will be having guests on the show. This idea, we had a lot of aligning views, but I know for a fact that in the future we might butt heads on things, but definitely we're going to be bringing people on. If you are ever interested, once we have the Discord, we will have signups and whatnot for future ideas, and we will bring people on. I want to bring people of all types of ideologies, whether you feel that you're radical, whether you feel that you're conservative, liberal, the whole nine. We just want to bring people because, again, what this boils down to is conversation. Let's exchange ideas. Let's shape our minds. We should be an amalgamation of our ideas, not being controlled by a set or a title that we slap onto ourselves. I want to thank Ryan here. Ryan definitely bringing some great ideas to the table. You can go follow him again at RCam TV on all socials? Is that your name?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, sometimes like on Twitter, it's rcam_TV. I mean, I got a website, just rcam.tv is my website.
Okay. All right. Yep.
And you can get to anything.
All right, cool. So hop over to RCam TV. We'll have graphics up in the future with all this. For YouTube, tell us what you guys think. Drop it in the comments. Drop a like. Hit the sub button. All that normal stuff that YouTubers say. Do it for us so that way we can get more conversations going. And I appreciate it. We'll have some outro music next time. You want to sing something?
You don't want me singing, guys. Nah. I appreciate all of you, though, and I hope you guys have a blessed night.
All right. Thank you, guys. You guys have a great night.